Hello, year 4. Oh my goodness. I'm really scared. I hope Pip's going to be alright. Chapter 59. George Stone was lying on the floor. Something was licking his face. Something warm, something wet, something with terrible breath. He opened his eyes. A dog was licking his face. "Hello, Snapper," whispered George. The spaniel wagged her tail. Using the wall as a support, George slowly hauled himself into an upright position. He looked around the room, staring at the appalling mess. Then touched his face, feeling for broken bones. When he'd spoken to the dog, his jaw had hurt. Come to think of it, just about everything hurt. He couldn't understand what was going on. Not only did everything hurt, but his home seemed to have been torn apart by the tempest. The table and the 2 stools had been smashed to pieces. The walls and the floor were splashed with blood. Whose blood? His? He turned to Snapper and said, "What happened?" The spaniel didn't reply. She just stared at him with wide eyes, then darted forward and licked his hand. Looking at her, George suddenly remembered what had happened yesterday. More than that, he guessed what Snapper was doing here. The weasel had taken the bears and the dogs to the market. The bears would have sold immediately, and he'd have found buyers for the sleek hounds and the sturdy mastiffs without too much trouble, but Snapper would have been trickier to shift. The only people who bought spaniels were rich ladies who wanted a cute little doggy to hug on their laps, but no lady would look twice at Snapper, not with her torn ears, her battle-scarred muzzle, and her scrappy coat, pock-marked with half-healed scabs and misshapen patches of missing fur. Unable to sell her, the weasel must have turned her loose. "Good dog," whispered George, tickling the Snapper's ears. She might not be the most beautiful spaniel in the world, but she was certainly intelligent. All alone, she'd managed to negotiate the streets of London and find her own way back home. "You're a very clever dog, aren't you?" Snapper's tail wagged furiously. With each second that George was conscious, more memories came flooding back. He remembered the weasel coming here again with his men, the questions, the beating, the pain, the knife sliding between his ribs, his own absolute refusal to say a word, and then, just as he was beginning to feel proud of himself for staying silent and keeping a secret, he remembered that he didn't. Pip was in danger. George tried lifting himself up, but his feet wouldn't take his weight, and he fell immediately, crumpling onto the floor. Snapper jumped backwards and stood in the middle of the room, staring at her master. George tried again. He grabbed the wall, using it for support, and hauled himself to his feet. The effort exhausted him. He'd lost a lot of blood. He waited there for a moment, cursing and catching his breath. When he'd gathered his strength, he pushed himself forward once more, pausing only to grab a knife and tuck it into his belt. He hobbled towards the door. Snapper followed at his heels. Together, the man and the dog stumbled down the street and headed for the Globe. Well, we know that George isn't a very nice man and that he told on Pip to the weasel in his gang. Let's hope he's going to redeem himself.